Well, President Trump suing the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch for $10 billion over a story they published tying the president to Epstein. The article saying Trump sent a suggestive letter to Epstein for his 50th birthday in 2003. For more, we have criminal defense attorney Ken Belkin and former prosecutor Vinoo and former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, our special guest. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Well, we have Press Secretary Leavitt tweeting the Wall Street Journal refused to show us the letter and conceded they don't even have it in their possession. Now, Ken, is the Wall Street Journal trying to smear President Trump?
I mean, look, what mainstream media news outlet hasn't tried to smear President Trump over the past 10 years he's been in public political life? You know, everything from the Russia scandal to fake impeachments to fake politically motivated criminal prosecutions. This is what I would call par for the course, and I'm not inclined to give it any sort of credibility.
Well, President Trump ordering Attorney General Bondi to release all of the relevant grand jury transcripts from the Epstein trials. This is interesting. What's your take on this, Vinoo?
Not much, because a federal grand jury is basically a joke. There's a very little amount of proof that needs to be presented in a federal grand jury. And all they have to do is, like, you and I can be hanging out, and then you tell me something about what your colleague on set told you, and I can go into a federal grand jury and tell somebody about that. And that's enough to secure the indictment. So it's highly unlikely anything of any importance is going to come out of a release of a grand jury testimony. Plus, they're going to have to get a court order to do that. You can't just, it's secret, it's sealed. You have to show a compelling public interest. I'm not sure they're going to even be able to do that. And I think that may be the reason why they said they're going to do it, because it's probably, A, it's nothing, B, it's not going to be able to be released.
Doug Burns, you're itching to say something, I can tell.
Yeah. This case is the absolute classic example. You could use it in a law school classroom to teach grand jury secrecy. Why do you have grand jury secrecy? You could be investigating someone for 10 murders, and somebody comes in and says, yeah, and on May 10th, he drove by a house that happens to belong to Doug Burns. Okay, fine. You have secrecy so that they don't turn around and say, Doug Burns was mentioned in connection with 10 murders in the grand jury. So here, we don't have guilt by association, obviously, and so they should be careful. And judges are not that inclined, by the way, to release stuff. So again, it's my same mantra: law and politics don't mix.
But let me get your take on this, Doug,
Sure.
really quickly. Do you think it's Trump's strategy to get the Democrats to call for this based upon who might be on the list?
Well, that's a great counterintuitive point, because I heard a couple of experts saying, it was very interesting, they said he may be goading them into getting all over their skis. You must release this stuff, and then it ends up hurting them politically. That would be interesting. No, seriously.
That
I agree,
would be classic.
John. Yeah.
Well, Trump truth, this scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. Ken, why does President Trump want to cut oxygen to this case?
Look, I don't want to speculate because there's a lot of secrecy around this case. If I had to guess, it has to do with some sort of national security purpose. We already know that, you know, a very popular Democratic former president is likely to be on that list, having flown on Epstein's Lolita Express private plane about 27 times. And I think we don't even need to name that president. But the reality is this could damage the reputation of the country. We don't know what secrets Epstein, you know, may have uncovered from some of the people he was blackmailing, because it's pretty clear this was a blackmail operation. And we don't know if those secrets should be public. There's a lot of aspects to this that I can imagine why they wouldn't want it coming out.
I just want to say President Bill Clinton, looks really good in a blue dress.
The visual, okay.
Who has that painting, by the way?
Yeah, they had a
I
painting
wonder.
of it, right, exactly.
I'm sure somebody does.
They did.
Well, Vinoo, President Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants remains blocked after a judge's ruling on Friday. Your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting because the Supreme Court said a month ago that judges, individual district court judges, so the initial judge that a case comes before cannot issue nationwide injunctions. Doug was talking about that on the previous segment. Good to see you, Doug. Good to see
Hey,
you,
good
Ken.
to see you.
But they outlined a method for which a judge can issue one if there's a class action lawsuit. So the judge followed the rules put forth by the Supreme Court and then stayed his ruling, which means it did not go into effect, giving the Trump administration an opportunity to appeal. They have not appealed it to date. So the question then becomes, are they serious about this? That's the question, because they could, when they argued the case against nationwide injunctions, it did not include a topic or discussion about whether this is valid or not. That was left to the side, and they just talked about nationwide injunctions. So we'll see. It should be interesting because he gave it a week. I don't think the week has expired yet. So we'll see what the Trump administration does.
People are upset with like the financial markets saying there are loopholes. I think there are more loopholes in our legal system than financial markets, Doug.
You're on a roll
You're talking
today.
to a couple lawyers. We like loopholes.
He's on a roll, taking us lawyers all to task. But the fact of the matter is, they went to Plan B, which is class action. So in my little example with the tree, sign up people from around the country whose neighbor's tree's hanging on their yard and then put them in the litigation. But Justice Alito said, and he was so right, he anticipated abuse because Rule 23, which you cited, John, requires a lot of hoops you got to go through, certifying the class, different administrative steps, and they're going to kind of try to run roughshod over those. But on the birthright thing, real quick, Congress could put into the statute that if your parents are here illegally, you're not a citizen, because there are other exceptions right in the statute.
You know what? I hate it when attorneys say,
Well, they
let's
still
talk
got to
about
go
that.
through
That means the bill is going to be higher. Kim Belkin, Vinoo, Verghese, and Doug Burns, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Good morning, everyone.